None of this makes any sense on paper until you have heard the whole thing. Now, before we get into the whole thing, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that yes, there is a kayak beside me in the middle of the room. Now, moving on. Who am I? My name is Paris Sue. They call me P2. I'm a nutrition and fitness coach, and I work primarily with weight class athletes, which is lifters and fighters, on having a sustainable relationship with food and fitness and being able to perform and feel good doing it. So before I started doing that, I've actually been coaching for about 11 years and I've had a couple hundred clients, which is wild and so wonderful to say. I'm very, very grateful for that chapter as they all blend, you see. And this is that story all about how my life turned upside down. um, so before I got into coaching, come on the journey with me. I actually thought I was going to be a journalist. So, younger me was very curious. I am still very curious. But I started in journalism and then I switched to communication. And the goal was to work in human rights and international development and human, um, whatever, in advocacy. And I actually worked at the Canadian Human Rights Commission for 5 years in as part of the comms team. I was a communication officer. And when I was younger, I really wanted to work for the World Health Organization or for the UN in Switzerland. It was a dream. And this is how that plan changed a little bit. We pivoted. Pivot. I always genuinely wanted to help people. I had these aspirations of changing the world. I thought it would be so cool to, help people recognizing the privileges that I had, and I wanted to pass it on. Um, and I realized, as one does, as we get a little bit older, as perhaps we discover therapy, we recognize our own insecurities, our own limitations, and like the motivation for certain choices that we had. And so I had the best of intentions, but I don't know if I was going about it the right way. And I'm very grateful that it was in my early 20s that I snapped reading a quote, which obviously I'm going to quote. So, an incredible quote by Rumi. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. I realized that I didn't want to just be clever and I didn't want to. I realized that it was just me. And again, I don't mean this in a bad way. I just mean I changed my perspective. So instead of thinking that I am going to be this insignificant little ant that I am is going to change the entire world. That's quite naive, narcissistic, selfish if you really think about it. Like, who am I to impose my personal lived experience or perspective on 8 billion people? And even though the goal was, health and international development, it came from maybe being like, oh, this is the right way. And I was really grateful that I had a whole other life we'll get into in a moment, like where sport and fitness were essential to my character plot and who I became and who I am. And so that quote, just to touch back on it, is when I was like, maybe we could start with me and have that ripple effect where you can change the world, but instead of coming from that perspective of like, yeah, I'm going to come save you, it's like, okay, let me focus on myself and what is within my control, address my own issues and seek support there. And then I can have the little, the ripple effect from my tiny little corner of the universe and the domino that that could have on other people. And I wanted to do all of this, but from a perspective that had integrity and impact my way. And I'm very grateful that I realized this pretty early in my 20s. So at the same time, so fortunately throughout high school and university, I mentioned I was an intern with health services, but I also had sport. And Honestly, one of my best decisions was when I wandered into a rugby practice. In high school, as most of us in the West discovered that way. And I was very curious about it, and I'm very thankful because it really became essential. The sport became essential to the way my brain works, to the way I perceive the world, and it was just monumental for the character, for the plot, for the plot. It was important. And then I realized the power that fitness had had on me, like how I had evolved from my own insecurities, how it had taught me discipline, how it had taught me confidence, and how so many things that I thought I wasn't able to do in fitness, whether it was rugby or it was lifting in the gym, or when I started when I did fitness competitions for a couple years, and that taught me something else. And I realized how much of that was another expression or avenue for the storytelling. And so I was living, kind of a double life. I was in the office doing something I was actually it was in my field. I was very grateful. I was aligned, but it also made me feel hopeless instead of helping, because I'm sitting, with my laptop reading horrific things happening, and I'm just editing, or I'm, supporting the rest of my very capable and far more experienced colleagues with certain things, and that were about like human rights and health and mental health and disability. And it just really felt like I wasn't actually doing anything. I wasn't making that impact that I sought, that I really wanted to have. And I started to realize a little bit of, the reality of bureaucracy, the reality of institutions, that, of course, things take time, duh, as it should. Sometimes, it takes time to create and implement policy, and there's a lot of moving parts. But I, in my early 20s, being rather impatient, being a little bit overzealous and very gung ho and ambitious and enthusiastic, I was like, hey, this can't be it. So I left, and I really wanted to use sport as my vehicle for the change that I wanted in my life and how I perceived the impact I would make. And then I started doing PT. I'm very, very grateful. And I remember one of my first experiences, I was sitting on the TTC in Toronto, Canada, just sitting for like 2 hours on the train or the bus, just going somewhere to help someone squat. And it was something so simple that I started to really feel very fulfilled. Like I didn't even care that I spent like 5 hours sitting on a train. And I felt like there was an immediate reward, and not reward in the sense of here's a gold star for UP2. It was more of like, hey, there's something this person is doing and it's having a positive impact in their life, and they're feeling better. And so they can go, the domino effect and pass it on. And then they can do good in their corner of the universe. And so I did PT for a while, a long time. And then, as much as I adored that, it was incredible. I get to be in a gym, which is one of my, my fun playgrounds, one of my safe spaces that I've adored my whole life, and get to be around people that are enthusiastic and with sport. I started to also recognize where my worlds merge, and where there's that hole in how we approach fitness and what I can bring to the table, that includes my curiosity, that includes storytelling, that includes my ambitions to have that human first lens, and to perhaps contribute to removing barriers and to further sport for myself and for future generations. And so that's where the human first, athlete second vision really just connected. I think of like this wasn't new. That's why I said that it doesn't fully make sense. It was actually what I was trying to articulate. If I think, move back in time to my 14-year-old self that thought, maybe I'll use this, maybe I'll use that. I use different pathways, but the goal was always this perspective of community, of camaraderie, of where we're looking at people as people, and then we're looking at all of the variables and give people that freedom, that autonomy, using fitness as a vehicle. And yeah, that's where it evolved to full circle back to my health comms and me having the opportunity to do this. This is my very first YouTube video. I had my podcast that started a couple months ago, and all of the incredible conversations I've had with my clients I've had the absolute privilege of working with around the world have always been, learning about them and then just like being a person and recognizing where their holes are in terms of, no, I'm not the world's most elite fitness trainer, but it's seeing things like the athletes that were demonizing carbs or afraid of food or not trusting their body or, you know, being praised for discipline and for being super strong, but they're struggling. And they're realizing that we kind of bypassed their humanity. We've now seen it again as like this one dimensional vision of them, which really kind of goes back to what I was saying from the beginning is that I saw this world as sort of one dimensional, didn't really understand all of the moving variables, and thus became my approach now, which is called the level up method. Because I'm gonna have a fancy term. Essentially, just means a response and a nice little bow on what it is that I was trying to articulate. Is that we are not robots, we're humans, and our personal stories, our own insecurities, our experiences, the way we perceive food, and our mindset, and the role that fitness and sport have had in our life, where we are in the world. Like all of this is just, a wonderful story that, is part of our plot. And I would like to contribute in helping someone have the capacity and the opportunity to further their story. And through sharing mine, whether it is if I'm like nervous or uncomfortable, we learn and we move on. So here we are making a YouTube video. A few years ago, I didn't think I would start a podcast, and I did. And then all of this again goes back to university when I was like, cool, we're gonna share stories and bring people with us. And I always had that perspective of like, cool, we're gonna go climb a mountain. But as strong as introverted, not introverted, wrong word. I'm a lot of things. I'm not introverted, but as independent is what I'm saying. As an ability to be by myself as I am, like I perceive like what is the point of anything if we can't celebrate with people? So I want to celebrate. I want to share everything I've learned, share everything I have unlearned, and to bring other people along the ride with me so that when we're on top of that mountain, inevitably we can celebrate together because the view is better with company. So, if any of that resonated, if you followed along with my rambles, welcome to this space. Please subscribe if you want to learn more about performance, about food, and coaching without the bullshit. Cool, we got some real talk. We got my experiences, like I mentioned, from rugby to bodybuilding to Muay Thai, to lifting, to traveling, to all of the above. And if you want to talk, if you would like to have a conversation, and if you're ready to get started on coaching or curious about the cohort, the Level Up Method cohort, and want to talk to a real human, my contact information is in the description box below. So, this was not a pivot, it was an evolution. It was inevitable, as Thanos would say. So, from human rights and development to human first, athlete second. I have personally had a lot of insecurities. I've had my own fears. I have had my own shame. I have trained through burnout. I've had multiple versions of burnout. I have done a lot of things the dumb way, the bro science way, the stupid way. I had the privilege of playing varsity rugby. I have coached for over a decade. I've coached youth. I've coached people of all ages. I have made a lot of mistakes. I have also grown tremendously. I have built something and continue that evolution. And that perspective of being an athlete, a student for life, is very much meted from that curiosity of wanting to be a journalist in the first place. It's just like, why? So let's dive in. And I'm very grateful that I'm here with you and helping athletes also do the same. Dig a little deeper, feel a little bit more at peace, and go kick some ass. So thank you for being here and for following along. More soon. Okay, bye.